What up, guys? Welcome to today's episode on the Chewjitsu podcast. We are going to do a little Q&A. We're going to start off the Q&A with a question about gym culture and gym cancer culture, not cancel culture, cancer culture. And this is where many people have heard it. This is not going to be the definitive podcast on this, but we'll talk about it and I'll share some ideas with you because it's something that's very important. Like, you have to protect your gym culture because the idea that it spreads like a cancer is 100% true, right? We'll talk more about that in a bit. And so you do have to take care of things as early as possible because, like a cancer, if it's not taken care of and you let it fester, it becomes harder and harder to remove without destroying the whole damn thing. Yep. So again, we'll talk about this idea in just a bit. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Charlotte's Web CBD. Again, been using their products for a bunch of years now, number of years, don't even remember how many years, since 2018. If you guys want to check them out, they've got a great supplement right now that I'm using, which is called Stay Asleep Gummy. It's a CBN product, a little different than CBD, but again, the whole product, as the name implies, is to help you stay asleep and get better rest. Again, for me, as I get older, that's like I'm all focused on the ability to recover and everything else, and sleeping well is one of those things that's very important. There are a lot of weird little things that I do, like managing the way that I drink fluids in the evening, so I don't wake up in the middle of the night. I don't know if, as you guys get older, I don't know if it's everybody, but you know.
Like sometimes I'll wake up at 4 a.m. and like I'm peeing for like 2 hours, and then you get 2 minutes,
right? And then you go back,
2 hours,
and then you try to go back to sleep, and you're like, damn, right? So, I rarely do that as much anymore.
It's good
because I'm like, there's a weird little tricks that I do with that to like basically make my bladder strong.
That sounds like an ebook, in the making.
Yeah, it would be the worst ebook ever, right? Like how to sleep through the night. That's how you know when you're getting old, right? Like you're like, I can't sleep tonight without having to take a leak. But anyway. This podcast is already going off the rails.
Good start.
But that said, one of the supplements that I do like to enhance my sleep is the Stay Asleep Gummy. If you guys want to check out that product or any of their products, go to their website. charlesweb.com is the website. Promo code, if you want to save 30% off the order, is Chewjitsu 30, CHEW 30 at checkout. Also, thanks to my buddy Matt at Epic Roll. One of you guys saw one of my students recently. You're like, I'm a podcast listener. And you saw my student who posted a picture of his new rash guard.
Was it Will?
Yeah. And he was like, hey, dude, did I miss the drop for these things? Like, I really want one. I was like, not yet. So I'm tweaking the designs a little bit because I was informed, unfortunately, at the Jiu-Jitsu or the IBJJF that my black one was not IBJJF legal. Stupid. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be tweaking the white and the black version so that there's no gray. But the other ones will be basically the same. And so once those are finished, we'll have them ready for you. Should be shooting for maybe February time.
Do you have shorts as well?
Yeah.
Are the shorts matching?
Yeah.
Sweet.
They look great. I'm pretty high. I'm pretty excited about it. Like, I haven't done like a new rash guard design, and I suck at getting designs together because I have no creative bone in my body, but I got a designer. He gave me a bunch, and this is the one I really liked.
Very cool.
And I really enjoy them. So those will be out towards February once I get that next design written up. But that said, if you guys want to check out Epic Roll, who will be making the rash guards and shorts in a bit, if you want to check out any of their products currently, go to their website, epicrollbjj.com. They've got everything from gis, rash guards, shorts, t-shirts, anything jiu-jitsu related, you name it, they got it. Great designs, great customer service, great quality stuff. And you can get 20% off the order if you would like to, using the checkout code Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. If you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can become a supporter on our Patreon, which again, obviously is a very inexpensive membership. Oh, I hate those words now. Everything's a membership. But again, it supports I just say that because like a lot of people are like, I don't want to make a commitment. But again, you can join in and cancel anytime. But but it's very inexpensive, right? And it supports the podcast. Then you get a bunch of perks and additional pieces of content, information, and everything from warm-up routines that Eugene's put together for all you inflexible jiu-jitsu practitioners. It'd be good for you to do something along the lines. We also have like recorded seminars, things of that nature, and a bunch of podcast extras that aren't released anywhere else. If you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/the-jiu-jitsu-podcast. Also, guys, if you would like to get my ebook, which is called Focus Jiu-Jitsu, which will help you give you 12 different strategies that you can employ during your open rounds to get more from your training, go to chewjitsu.net/join. The purpose of the ebook is to help you get a little bit more focused during your open rolling. A lot of gyms I find do not do a lot of situational training. And so situational training or finding some way to make it that way can be very, very useful. And so in the ebook, I will give you some strategies to do just that. Now, after you get the ebook, you will then start to get my daily email, which again goes into everything from jiu-jitsu, like training stuff to, I mean, like yesterday I was talking about the Khabib. Why you fly frontier, brother?
Right.
But you know, anything and everything fighting and jiu-jitsu related, even so I some stuff in there. There's going to be one about Ralph Waldo Emerson and some of his ideas and how they pertain to what we do. Anything and everything goes in there. If you guys want to check it out, you can unsubscribe at any time. But again, the website is chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. So guys, with that said, let's check out this question. Eugene, if you want to pop the question up.
All right. I just had a really interesting Khabib could be a really good like airline. He could have a good quote. Send me location and like for the airline, you know. Yeah. There it is.
Send me location.
Send me location. All right, let's pull this bad boy up.
I felt so bad for him. It's like, you know, and everybody was like,
the English is great, by the way.
You know, I wish I could have seen the entire exchange between them, because like obviously, you know, everybody on the internet was like just screaming racist in the comments. And I was like, I probably, you know, have you ever heard of Hallen's razor, which is basically the idea that like what you it's been said a lot of different ways, but basically it's Hanlon's razor. It's that you don't attribute to malice what is more often just stupidity.
Yeah.
And so like with a lot of times with those kinds of things, I'm like, probably not racist, probably just being like most of them, I think like more often than not, people are just assholes. Yeah. Right. Like, and so it's like, they're just assholes. Like, that's all it is. Right. It's like, so the flight attendant, whoever this person was, probably had Khabib respond to them in a certain way that maybe they didn't prefer. They're having a bad day. They go on a power trip and take it out on people. You know, I mean, how many of us have experienced someone having a power trip on us in like one of those frontline sort of customer service positions? I think it's probably happened to everybody because people have bad days. I think the beautiful part was how Khabib handled it. I guess he technically could have just got up and moved his seat, but on the principle of the matter, he just got up and was like, all right, I'm walking off. Yeah. Like he didn't get angry.
Yeah, they made him deplane, I think.
I think they offered him. Well, they offered him originally because he wouldn't move. They offered him to like change seats, but he was like, all right, well, I'll get up and leave. But he didn't freak out. He didn't go, because this dude's a millionaire. Like, he's a millionaire, one of the best fighters of all time. Yeah. He didn't get up and freak out on people like that one influencer girl. It was like some girl was on a plane. It was like sometime last year, and she gets kicked off the plane. And she's like, "Do you know who I am?"
Oh God!
You know, she's like, "I
hate that. That's probably the worst thing you can say as like the worst. Someone who thinks they're a celebrity,
right? And you're not a celebrity. You're like you're some random person on the internet. Like you have an Instagram account. Like nobody cares. Like you know what I mean? Like I don't care. You have 100,000. Nobody cares. Yeah. You're on a plane. Nobody knows who you are. Yeah. But like Khabib, like guarantee you, someone was like someone was on that plane, was a fight fan going, oh snaps, that's Khabib. But they don't want to say anything because they don't want to get kicked off the plane either, right?
I'd say one of the best fighters and one of the best coaches of all time. I mean, pretty incredible. All right, well, let's get to it. All right, Chewy, so you got a question from Collin, and he asks, you had mentioned how gym culture can get messed up and become cancerous without enforcers. How do you recognize it, and how do you fix it from the inside? I feel like we're doing pretty well at our gym with the new aggressive guy who comes to class. The upper belts usually put him in place, you know, and then he chills out. But if one of the enforcers becomes a bully and turns on the other students when his ego is threatened, what do you do there?
So let's talk. We'll talk about the gym enforcer part, and then the like sort of the cancerous culture, right? With the gym enforcer, first off, let's make sure that I'm crystal clear here, right? Like, I'm not like, if some guy's a little rowdy in the beginning, because we're all a little rowdy in the beginning. Like, as white belts, a lot of times I sort of tell everyone, just expect the newer white belts to be wild because they're untrained. Yeah, I was wild, right? And I wasn't mean, I wasn't angry, I wasn't rude to anyone. I was just wild. You know, and because I didn't know what I was doing, and I was ultra competitive, and it wasn't bad. So again, you know, it's not that I'm not like sicking the hounds on these people when they're brand new. It is reserved for a situation where you have someone that's displaying a certain behavior and you like the person. So if I don't like the person, I'm just going to ask them to leave. Because if I don't like you, I don't want this to become something that we're just being mean to you and we're going to rough you up because we're just going to be mean to you. Okay. Like, it's like, I like you and I want you to stick around for a while. That's when I'm using the enforcer. It's like, if I don't like you, it's kind of like this. I saw a meme the other day. It said like 90% of being a dude is, giving your friends taking the piss out of them and like to their face, but cheering them on behind their back, right? Like, the people that we're closest to sometimes where they're like roughest with them, if I like you, I tell this to my students, like, because a lot of times in the gym, we're cracking jokes on each other. I'm like, look, if I crack a joke on you, it usually means I like you. Because if I don't like you and I cracked a joke on you, like, that's just mean, right? Like, it's like, I don't want to do that. That's weird. That's mean. Like, that's just being nasty. And so if we're in a situation where I actually like you, I will go out of my way to help you. But sometimes you try to help people and you just do it, verbally. And sometimes verbally works perfectly.
Yeah.
Hey, man, like, let's just check that. Hey, let's stop doing that. No problem. Works perfectly. Sometimes people are very immediately responsive to it. So you just do it verbally. The physical check of the enforcer is reserved when that doesn't work. And again, sometimes, we live in a, this was very normal behavior when I was younger. Now we live in a much softer time and the gyms have changed a lot. And so now it's like people will go, oh, this is such a barbaric practice. I'm like, no. It's not barbaric. Like, it was done to me at some point and I was glad that it was done. Like, and again, it can be done in different ways. So for instance, like with me, like, I didn't want anything to do with being on my back. Right. Well, my coach is like, all right, I'm going to smash you, like, and keep sweeping you, smash you in these positions. And so you understand that you don't have a choice sometimes. You got to play off your back.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes guys, I'm sure women, sometimes you guys, but I'm speaking from personal experience here. We have thick skulls, right? Like, it's really hard for stuff to get in there. And unless we have that physical experience, sometimes we just, kind of just shrug it off. A lot of times it's those physical experiences that we have that really smack us in the face and make us take notice. It's why competitions are so effective for making your game better, because you go out into the situation in a setting where you really want to win. It means something to you. You get your butt kicked, and boy, afterwards it stings sitting with you. You got a fire under you, so it makes you want to change. So the enforcer is not like just going out there and ragdolling this person, being unsafe, anything of that nature. It's very, very different. Like, here's an example. One, we'll talk more about this in a second with cancer, gym culture, and all that stuff. But one sort of behavior, which I think is an absolute corrosive agent for the gym, is celebrating in like locker room talk. Like, go in the back room, like, we're all done changing. You're like, yeah, man, I just submitted so-and-so, and bragging about it as if it matters, right? As I always say, training in the gym, like, it doesn't count. Like, if you're trying to get hung up on how many you win or go compete, you go compete. That's what competing is there for. Otherwise, none of it matters. There's no such thing as having a record in the gym. That's it, right? So if you get a person that's bragging about it, what happens is it then starts to create this issue where, let's say that Eugene, you've been bragging that you've been submitting people, maybe you even submitted me. Maybe it was like we were rolling and I was maybe allowing you to catch something on me, whatever you're submitting me, or maybe we're the same skill level and you caught me. Well, the next time we roll, like, I'm going to roll at you harder. I'm going to have to be much more cautious because I don't want to lose to you anymore. Because I don't want to have like this guy rubbing salt in the wound, like, oh, you suck, right? Because again, yes, it doesn't count, but at the same time, we all know that it is a vulnerable state that we're putting ourselves in, both physically and mentally. Because anytime we fail at something, we're trying to learn from it, and you need to have a culture of like openness towards that.
Yeah.
Opposed to, you've got this guy bragging about beating you, like, that's irritating. And so it changes the dynamic of the role. And then it'll happen with everybody else, because everybody else is going to start doing this where they're like, I can't experiment when I'm rolling with old Eugene because Eugene brags about it. And so what's going to happen is then all of a sudden, then they take on that. And then it starts to spill over to other people. And then before you know it, everybody's rolling with each other with this worry that they're going to brag about it or whatever. And then what happens if that person who's bragging you all of a sudden begins to climb up the ranks? Let's say that you become a purple belt and you're now continuing to brag about beating people up and talking trash about people behind their backs in the locker room or whatever, right? I've seen it happen before at different gyms. Okay, well, now when these new people come in, these new jiu-jitsu practitioners who come in, what do? They're like little children. They look up and go, what is the right way to act in this environment, right? What are we doing?
Yep.
It's like, you look at your son, your daughter, they look at you and go, okay, I'm watching them for a reaction. What am I supposed to do? and they mimic you.
Yep.
Well, they're going to mimic that. They're going to mimic those behaviors to some degree because that is the culture of the gym. They're either going to leave or they're going to mimic. So all of a sudden, you now have a couple of years down the road, this purple belt who has been allowed to do this, and then they are spreading that idea to these other people. So we had a guy like that years ago, and he was white belt, and he was bragging about it. Now he was good. He was very talented early on, and was doing well in our beginners classes. And
Right.
some of our like belts, like blue belts and purple belt, we're working with them. They like a lot of times our blue and purple belts are either playing down a little bit, or sometimes they're working on other aspects of their game. So they're not giving the A game every roll. Right. And so he mistakenly took this as like, oh, I'm like beating blue belts and purple belts. Huh, I'm pretty damn good. So he's in the locker room talking, and I had several people tell me about it. So I talked to him, say, hey, bro, like, just chill out with this behavior. Like, we can joke with each other, but like, we don't joke about that. Right. Like, and if you do joke about it, you got to like have a really tight relationship with the person, because the whole idea, if you guys like are familiar with the theory, one of the theories for the reasons why we will joke with each other and tear each other down is because it signals to each other that our relationship is stronger than the joke.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if I make a joke that would be offensive to most people, but you don't take offense to it, right? Well, then it means that our relationship's tight and it's stronger than the joke.
Yeah.
So it's a test, right? So again, there can be something there, but if you're not close to that person, you don't have a rock solid relationship, not the right joke.
Right.
And so I told him, didn't listen. So I was like, all right. So I was like, I told some of our purple belts, I'm like, all right, if you roll with so-and-so, like, give him the business. Let him know where he really is right now. Right. Opposed to like being easy on him. And like one of them days, like armbarred him like, a bazillion times in a round. Afterwards, he got up. He's like, "What the hell?" I was like, "Well, this is what this could be like.
Mm-hmm.
This is where they're actually at. Don't mistake them working with you to try to help you as, oh, you're right there with them, right? So like, just chill out on the talk, like joke around, have fun, but like chill out on the talk." And he did. Worked out great. And I was talking about earlier, not knowing whether this is a man or a woman. I had a woman do it years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Literally said to me, like, one of the black belts was rolling with her. And like, she was a very talented female grappler competitor.
She's
tough. I mean, she's
gritty.
Tough. She's winning competitions at her division, like white belt, female, everything else. She's rolling with one of our black belts. And I remember black belts helping her. And I remember we were talking one day. She's like, yeah, I submitted one of the black belts. I'm like, well, he's like letting you work. She's like, I don't think so. I was like, no, he's letting you work. Like, he's allowing you to work, whatever. And she just, and I thought she was joking, but she was dead serious that she thought she had beat a black belt legitimately. I was like, oh, I was like, okay. And I told our black belts, hey, next time you roll with her, like, don't give her nothing. Just like, and I'm not saying hurt her, because he didn't hurt her, but it was like, anybody that's ever rolled with a good technical black belt, and this black belt, by the way, is a smaller dude. It's like all of a sudden it's like you're rolling with this like boa constrictor.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you move, they take an inch, and then you never get it back. And then before you know it, you're just tied up. And
that's right.
That's what he did. He's like, basically just like, this is what it is. And again, you're not doing that to be rough and mean. You're just letting them know, like, hey, this is the reality of the situation. Right. So chill out and let's go. Now, again, I've had that happen in numerous ways where here's one last example for you. Had a guy, big old 250-pound, like straight. I think he may have been a Marine, may have been just a military guy. I can't remember what branch he was in, but he was a military fella. He's still younger, but he just gotten out, but he's still full of piss and vinegar, and he's a big fella, muscular, and this is 2000 and maybe 2011, 2000, maybe 2010 even. It was a long time ago. This is like a different environment than the landscape that you all inhabit today in jiu-jitsu. This is like when most people came into the gym, they're like wanting to fight. Every now and then you get someone that wants to do jiu-jitsu, but most people were coming in, they had some sort of fighting aspect to it. And this guy was the same. He was like wanting to fight. He had done, some combative training or maybe McMaps, whatever it was. And, he had, messed around with some of his buddies. He thought he was really good. And so he comes in and he has this sort of arrogance to him, I guess because of his size and athleticism. And it's like, I'm talking to him and, he's just going on. I was like, well, why don't you go roll with that little guy over there? And, let's just see what happens, And I gave Chad this little wink.
Yeah, little guy, Chad.
Yep. And Chad was like a he's like friggin' probably 5'10" at the time, 120 pounds, had a little Justin Bieber haircut from back in the day.
I love it.
Yep. And
Yeah.
so he had a little windswept hair. He goes there and he triangles him. Now, this guy was like there. I'm like, hey man, like if you're caught in the triangle, tap out. And he's like trying to fight out of it. And he ends up going to sleep. And I have to wake him up. And he's like waking up. I'm like, you all right, man? He goes, yeah. I was like, listen, man, like you got to lose that attitude. Like if you're going to come in here and train, like you got to drop yourself down a peg a bit. Like you got to be willing to submit yourself to the art. Now he was not, and he left. He never came back. But I've had those kinds of situations. None of those no one got hurt. No one had their arm ripped. It wasn't that kind of situation. It's basically just giving you a touch. Like, hey, this is the reality of the situation. Like, let's adjust. Let's adjust your behavior. So that's the enforcer thing. I want to be clear on that. Now, cancerous behaviors.
Yes.
That's there are some ones that are like absolutes, but there's some that are relative, right? Because there are some behaviors from gym to gym that will change, that would be cancerous in one versus not cancerous in another. Because when we're talking about cancerous, we're talking about you creating, like when we're talking about gym culture, we're creating sort of a cohesive set of social norms that we all sort of abide by that bonds us together and keeps us united, right? Like, so you're creating this culture, this bond, this fabric that unites us together. Any sort of cancerous behaviors would be something that then sort of invades that territory, begins to pull that fabric apart. As I was saying before, like the idea of a person who's bragging and making boastful comments, that's corrosive because it takes that fabric, that webbing that connects us all together, and it starts to eat at it, right? So then we're no longer united in this common bond of we're taking care of each other in training, right? Yeah. It's I'm trying to get mine and you're trying to get yours versus we're taking care of each other. Because to me, like I've talked about this many times, like my heart, like no matter how hard I'm training in the gym, in the back of my mind, like if you and I are rolling, your health and safety is just as important, if not more important than like me winning this round. Like making sure that you can train tomorrow is like, that's primary importance.
Yeah.
And whether or not I beat you is below that. Like for instance, I'm rolling with, if you and I are rolling, if I had a submission and I'm getting ready to catch you, if I think that I might have to risk your injury, I'm going to let it go. Mm-hmm. Because there's sometimes like where you get a submission and you're falling off to the side and you just don't have good control. I bail on it because it's not worth it. Yep. So that again, but then if we were in a situation where maybe you were talking trash, I don't really like you, I might not show that same kind of restraint. And that becomes cancerous because now we're trying to like go after each other instead of training, instead of improving, instead of working on skill. We're trying to just compete against each other in a competitive environment. That's not going to be a good idea. So I think that, for instance, is a absolutely cancerous behavior. But at the same time, there's a lot of behaviors at different gyms and the way that people run gyms that could be cancerous at one, but not another. I mean, like our gym, for instance, we're pretty like, and I think many gyms are like this, but not all. We're pretty not PC about the way we speak.
We joke around about stuff.
We joke around. We joke around in a way where it's like you can say whatever you want to, right? Like as an example from like the election stuff, just as an example, because it was just everybody's on everybody's mind. I mean, you had people cracking jokes on both sides of the political fence. Great. Like, fine. This is what this is supposed to be. It's like we can come into a place where we have a shared bond that's more important than all the superfluous stuff that we're subjected to, right? I mean, hell, it obviously works for even like, you look at Trump and Obama, they're at the friggin' funeral, like chatting it away, laughing with each other. Yeah. You're like, meanwhile, they're talking to each other like they're the worst people ever in uniting people against one another, but then they're sitting next to each other, laughing. If that was really, that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's all for show. It's like pro wrestling stuff, in my opinion. Right.
Yeah. I think it has to be for show. I think because that's how you get people on your side. It has to be conflict. It has to be us versus them.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but it's the conditions we live in.
Yes. Especially like politically in that in that sense, I think it's.
Well, think about this. Think about the world that we live in today. Think about, like, first off, there's always been like, political mudslinging. That's always kind of been a thing. It was just much more genteel than it is now. But when you look at our environment, right? Like if you're going to fight for noise, you have to fight through all the noise. I mean, this is like one of the things where you look at all the social media stuff. everything is constantly being ratcheted up to be more dramatic, more conflict, more this, because there's just so much crap on those damn social media apps where everybody's fighting for attention. So you wind up with people just saying bombastic, terrible things that may or may not be true. And then you have, even the videos themselves are so highly edited. It's like everything's so jittery and fast, and there's bright colors because we don't think you can pay attention for more than 5 freaking seconds because your attention span's been destroyed because you're scrolling all day. So if you're going to have someone care about the election, we got to make this thing seem like it's like an existential crisis, because if we don't, you won't even pay attention. You'll be too busy friggin' playing on TikTok.
Yeah.
So, insert that stuff. But that said, we make a lot of jokes at our gym that I think sometimes people would find offensive, which again, that would be considered toxic to most. To me, I consider it freeing, where you can say what you want and you don't have to be worried about what anybody thinks. Like, it's like, again, as long as you're not saying something that would be invidious to another group of people, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a different situation, right? Like if you're saying something that would be like absolutely awful, but if you're just joking around with each other and making jokes, it's like, it's fine. Like we like, and again, context matters, right? Like words are one thing, but we understand that the definition of a word can be changed instantly by the context and the tone and everything else that goes along with it. And so I think that's important. So like a lot of times we say stuff that would be maybe considered bad in another place, but fine in our place. So there's some relativism, but there's also these behaviors that are going. Now I'll let you speak a little bit because I've been rambling. So I'm sure you got some stuff that you want to throw in because
I agree with a lot of the stuff. I mean, like the locker room talk's a big one. That's a big one because it makes it changes the stakes a little bit. It's more should be, training should be number one about like improving, getting better, learning. Winning is kind of secondary, I think. And you don't want to win at the extent of or at the expense of injuring your training partner or being known as someone that injures, because then you're not going to get people are not going to want to train with you. We've had that,
sure,
and that shit that sucks.
It's like you flip the light on and like the cockroaches scatter. It's like, hey, grab a rolling partner.
I think anything that is isolating to people, like anything that isolates, we talked about that could be cancerous in the gym. Anything that like excludes people, because like we want everybody to come in and just be part of the gym. Nobody cares like what you look like or what you believe in, as long as you're kind of take care of your training partners and you're a good training partner and you're kind. So anything that isolates, I don't know if there's anything that you can think of, Chewy, that may be an isolating thing that you've seen. I don't know anything like that, but the other one would be, I just thought like somebody that's like super aggressive against like lower skilled, like maybe like
lower skilled or like
the
super aggressive or women,
really aggressive towards like, like
smaller
maybe white
people.
belts, smaller belts or smaller people. I mean, and then like maybe even women, they're kind of like move a certain way with them or, that's another thing.
I've had to like, get on like certain guys where sometimes it's like I don't think that they realize, or, it's like they're just not thinking about it, but like, rolling with smaller people.
Yeah.
Like an example, like here was when I was the enforcer one time. We had a big guy. This is 2008. Yeah, 2008. There was this big guy who was training with us. I'm a purple belt at the time. And this guy's just roughing up small dudes. Coach had talked to him, like, hey, man, ease up on the little dudes. Because he wasn't doing anything. He's like literally, he's like this like juiced up 270-pound dude just folding guys, and it's just like he's not being a cool training partner. I'm not saying he has to roll over to let the smaller people win, but you can play in a way, even when you're bigger, you can play in a way that can be conducive to skill and also be enjoyable for the person who maybe you could just flatten out like a pancake. Yeah. So the coach comes up to me. It was tasked to me to beat him. Like go do something with him. Like he's just over here crushing people. I look over and he's got like a 140-pound dude. And he's got him in like a cradle, just wrenching his neck. I was like, all right, fair enough. So I roll with him, and I figured out how to do a really sneaky, simple way to do a rear naked choke because we were rolling. And I remember he was like, nobody can choke me because I don't have a neck, right? Because I've got big shoulders. This and that. I was like, all right, well, we'll find out. Yeah. And I remember like I choked him like 3 or 4 times, like in the round, and it wasn't necessarily the most fun experience for him because it's like I just got to his back and would choke him, picked it back and choke him.
There you go.
But it was like, again, then reiterate afterwards, hey man, chill out on the little dudes. Like, be cool. Like we can all play this game of like the bigger fishes out there. Like just be cool, And again, it's like, it's not to say that big people can't beat the smaller person. It's just like, be cool, man. Like just like be responsible with your size, just like someone should be responsible with their skill. Like if you're highly skilled and you're rolling with someone less skilled, then there's a certain responsibility that goes to you to keep the rolls safe, and to keep people safe, other than just like, you know, being wild, just wrenching people's stuff. Right. So you gotta keep that in mind.
I'd say someone like that rips submissions. That's another one I was thinking. Somebody that just kind of,
that's like, an absolute like bad behavior.
Like, you know, chokes, I guess. Yes. I mean, you can hold a choke. Somebody doesn't tap and they go to sleep. I mean, that's one thing. And you can also, if you have it locked in, you know, you have it locked in, you may let go. But anybody like put somebody in a situation where like they're not tapping and you're not going to like, you know, you've got them and you're like basically like eye to eye with them. You're staring at them for 3 seconds. You know, you got them, just let it go. Or you can say, I got you, whatever. But if you're someone that rips them and you're just trying to finish it at all costs, that's a red flag for me. At
the same token, the person who doesn't want to tap, they're toxic.
That's
you know what I mean? It's like,
that's true as well.
I remember there was a guy that trained at our old gym. There was an MMA fighter who had like spiky hair, who used to like run. He used to want to run around to like the bars with his like little like amateur, you know what I'm about? Okay. So he would come in. I remember when he came in, he would literally like not want to tap to anything. And I was like, all right, I guess you're going to sleep then. Like, I mean, because I guess that's what we're going to do. I was like, because I want to break your arm. So I guess I'll just make you go night, right? Like, so stupid. So again, you know, being one of those people is a terrible idea. You know, if you're one of those people and you're not tapping to submissions, you're just as cancerous as a person that's ripping submissions, because you're creating an environment where now it's like playing the game of chess and someone puts you in checkmate. You just keep moving pieces.
Yeah.
Like, hey, hold on a second, dude. Like, this is supposed to be the end. We're done. Let's not take this any further.
Right.
You know, and so 100% those are both cancerous behaviors.
We had another one, which I think someone at the gym, they enjoyed your classes, but we had some other coaches.
Oh yeah.
And they kind of talked poorly. They
either
didn't really pay attention, like, so they were like doing their own shit during class, not paying attention to the technique. They were saying things, mentioning things. They were like late, or they were not really doing
chronically late.
And not doing things that, like, you know, just kind of messing with the class structure and like building kind of friction between them and the other training partners and the coaches. So like that was something that I think you had to address at one time.
I mean, he got kicked out of the gym.
Yeah.
Because, you know, again, but he was there and he was creating a situation in that same person, like kind of a similar situation, right? Where like he went in and like got into an argument with one of the other like brown belts at the time, and he was a blue belt. One of our brown belts, over something really stupid, but was very disrespectful to the brown belt, in a way that just no teammate should be disrespectful. This has nothing to do with the brown, blue, purple, whatever. Just being disrespectful to another one of the teammates. And, you know, I remember he was roughhousing some people, like just roughing them up. And so one day I told him, I was like, rolled with him, and I just beat the crap out of him. And I was like, I told him, I was like, sit down, dude. I was like, why did I do that? Now he took it the wrong way. He's like, oh, you're trying to make me better. I'm like, no, dude. I was like, I literally, if you want me to make you better, I'm gonna make you better. I can just literally trash through you every like 30 seconds if I want to. It's like, that doesn't do anything for me. I was like, there's nothing I get from that. I was like, if I'm working on something skill wise though, it's like I get value from it, and you actually get a little play. I was like, but don't come in here and be rude, and don't be rough with the less experienced people, you know, and have this ego trip. I was like, so you got to chill out, man. And then again, it just didn't stick. And then later on, we ended up having to ask him to leave. He had a situation where like he thought he was like, there's so many other stories about the same person where I was trying to help him out, but just didn't work out. But I mean, again, he thought he was like the best person besides me in the gym. Even told it to me. I was like, bro, like, I was like, we got a lot of purples and browns that are like, and black belts that are way tougher.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I don't know why you think this about yourself, right? Like you have a bit of delusion there, but again, it just didn't work out, you know, but we tried. I was like, I definitely tried. I tried to like, you know, like both verbal, like heart to hearts, and even like try to give you that physical, whatever. But there's certain times where, you know, someone's like their delusion's a little bit too much.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously there's a lot of, when we're talking about a gym enforcer or getting somebody at the point where they get kicked out of the gym, there's like a lot of warnings that go into place. Is there something that you might see that somebody like that you may kick somebody out right away?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I've ever had anything to, if someone gave me some extreme example, like obviously, here's one. If I look up on like a website and like you're like this happened with someone, had a member come in or had a person that was like wanted to become a member, searched them up in the sex offender database.
There you go.
And like they had, done terrible things to children that were, because it says like under the age of a certain, like very young.
Oh,
it was like, you got to go.
Yeah. I can't
Like
have that.
Yeah, you got to go. It's like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, cause it's like, to me, it's like, if I hate to be this way with it, but like, if you're that way, to me, something's like you came out of the box to like malfunctioned, right? It's like you're like a defective toy. Like I'm sorry, like you just came out of the box, something screwed up. Because like to me, it's like, like when you're talking about like doing something terrible like that to such a young child, you have kids, like I have a young kid.
Sure.
You're like, you look at this little vulnerable innocent thing, you're like, how do you do that? And then also too, like, there's no part of me, right? It's like, this is like, I'm one of these people where I think you're just probably born gay. Like for, there used to be a time where it's like, oh, we can like get the gay out of you, right? Like, it's like, I don't think it's like, you just are. That's just probably how you are, right? So it's like, okay, cool, that you're just gay. That's fine. You came out of the box this way. That's what you are. That's perfectly fine. Go find a person that is also that way. And then you guys can have a great life together. I've never once, not once, have I ever been interested in sort of a gay lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. Also never been interested in like a young child.
Yeah.
And in that way. Right. So to do that, I'm like, you're screwed up. There's no, cause I can't, like, you know what I mean? It's like the temptations, it's like, not cheating on your wife or something, right? Like there's like maybe a real temptation to someone who's like, oh, well, like I do like women. Right. Right.
Yeah.
But like saying like the temptation of like a child, there's nothing there. It's like there's no urge.
Regardless of
and so going back to it,
yes,
I kicked that person out of the gym because I'm like, I don't understand like how you could have done that thing. And I don't want to empower someone that ever wanted to do something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you ever decided you wanted to do it again, I don't want to say, hey, I supported you.
I want to give you the tools.
I don't want to give you even better tools to do
it. Right. I think like the way I think of it, if that's the situation, I think there's a risk. There's a risk, right? Of that person being around other people at the gym, especially when you start the thing about
could you imagine what you would have done if you rolled with a person like that? Like, what if you were rolling with some guy and all of a sudden you found out he had done terrible things to a very young child? Like, how would you feel in that? Like, we got so many dads and moms in the gym. Like,
yeah, it'd be rough.
Be very awkward.
It'd be rough. Like,
it'd be a bad situation.
Now we've had, look, on the other side of it, we've had people that were in jail or prison before, and they come in and they're like trying to change their life.
Yeah, of course.
And like, they've done made bad decisions, but like that
bad decisions,
some
like
that are
selling drugs like when you're young, because that's what you see like is the way to make a little bit of money, and then trying to reform, and then you're getting a job and everything else, and you're trying to turn things around. That's a very different situation, right? Because you're just like, it's understandable in some respects, right? Not a decision I would make, but again, I understand it.
Well, desperate times, like some people are very desperate. They got to put food on the table. Or that's the culture, or that's the environment they grew up in.
And that's what I was gonna say. If you grow up in those environments, it's like
that's the norm, right?
If you're like everybody remembers like how small your sort of, it's like, your available knowledge is in like a little spotlight, right? How small your available knowledge is when you're like a teenager, right? So if you do stuff like that, it's understandable.
Yeah, it's that's a rough one. Yeah, there are some, I think, and someone, that I respect, Rob from McDojo Life will call, like, he'll see that there's like sex offenders and stuff at gyms. He'll call them out, and they get mad, and I think he gets death threats and stuff from that, which is terrible. But like, he does something I think it's kind of important. Like, at least, he sheds a light on that stuff, and that stuff is there, and you have to be aware, and you have to have, I mean, I think the other thing, red flag, if you're a student, like maybe your coach is in some way predatory behavior in some way like that, like, because there are, I mean, like, we used to think, like, I would think, oh, jiu-jitsu has all these wholesome, amazing people, and
there are
like,
a lot of them.
There are a lot of them, most of them, but then there's bad apples, in everything.
There's everything. It's like, like there's surgeons that will, like try to like sell your organs, like, you know what I mean? Like doesn't mean all surgeons are bad. Just means
No,
like
no.
that person's bad, you know? So
But,
you're
yeah.
going to have some bad martial artists because it's a situation where you're in this place of authority. And sometimes, you know, positions of authority, you know, there's lots of different things like where it basically just amplifies
Yeah.
like whatever your personality, good and bad, sometimes it can amplify those things in some cases, right? So if you already have some sort of like slant towards, you know, bad behaviors, it can amplify those to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, and there's important, like if you've got people in leadership roles that are showing, you know, signs of probably not the best behavior, I think that can be, you know, for Jim, because that I think leads to issues with the coaching staff.
Oh, sure.
Because they'll see that as the example like we talked about. You got to be a good leader. So if you have certain things, is there anything from like, I mean, obviously from coaches, we're looking for certain things too. Is there certain things that you've not promoted people or not kind of given people the opportunity to be in leadership roles because of certain behaviors?
Sure.
Yeah. So,
like, you know, like, I mean, like there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, like I've done where like people were making weird social media posts, in sort of like a nasty sort of derogatory way and just acting a certain way that I thought was not the way that I would want one of our leaders to present themselves.
Yeah.
Or I've talked to people and sort of told them to tone down because, like, again, as a leader of a gym, if you're teaching class, I think that I'm not saying you can't have opinions,
of course,
but they should be thoughtful and measured. So, for instance, like if you're going to post something on social media as an example, you will have people that will agree with you and disagree with you that are in your classes. Nothing wrong with that. It's fine to disagree with people, but at least be thoughtful. And like I try to tell the people that, like, if we have leaders, like treat it as treat social media like I would have to say this to your face.
Yeah.
Not like what most people do, which is like mental vomit, right? They don't think about what there it is, right? Like they just throw it out there with no thought, right? Like just wait a little bit, measure it, because you're trying to be in this position where you're bringing people together. And all of a sudden, if you become this way or that way, you will naturally drive one side off and then the other, opposed to saying, you know, if you at least come at it from a thoughtful place, even if people disagree with you, they can at least sort of respect you versus just verbal, like mental vomit. Then it's like, it just comes off a lot of times as very aggressive. Kind of go into an idea that I thought about as we're doing this. Some of the things that I would consider like would be cancerous to our environment is the idea of like pulling rank on everything. So it's not uncommon at some gyms where it's like, for instance, I went to a gym years ago and they were very, very, you know, focused on rank and this proper type thing. And I remember there was this white belt who was looking at me and I eventually look at him, right? I'm like, hey, what's up, man? And he like moseys on over and we start talking and he's like, yeah, man, like, we start talking and he's lingering around. I was like, hey, do you want to roll? He said, yeah, I'd love to. And so I sort of then think, why didn't you just ask? So I asked him, say, hey, why didn't you just simply come over and ask me if you wanted to roll? Because I saw you eyeing me. I just didn't know I didn't know if there was like something wrong with my gi, if I had a stain or something, like what it was. He said at his gym, as white belts are not allowed to approach black belts and ask them to roll. To me, that's just freaking weird, right? You know, I just think it's an odd practice. You know, I've even heard about some of the old school gyms where they would literally have like a shower in the back. And like, let's say this is a story from one of my buddies who, you know, he has no reason to lie to me about it, but he was at this gym. He's going back and there's like a blue belt in the shower and there's like one shower stall. Black belt comes in. Hey, man, get out of the shower. Black belt. Blue belt gets out of the shower. You know, he wasn't even finished, but out of the shower, you know, so that kind of stuff would be odd to me. I think that's an odd thing. You know, again, I think it's more of like I like the more brotherly, sisterly, we're all in this together. We do respect people on their skill and to a degree their character for those reasons, but we're not looking at them as like, just because you have this belt around your waist means you're just this infallible human being, right? So there's, again, going back to it, there's things that are relative, but there are like those absolutes that are just like, this is wrong. I've never kicked anybody out over this, but there have been a couple times years ago where guys would actually fight, get into the middle, like they get into a scuffle, and I have to like put a break on that stuff. You know, one last one is the gauntlet. So we still do the gauntlet, but the gauntlet is considered like no. And again, I've actually done surveys multiple times, anonymous surveys where you don't have to tell me anything. I'm like, hey, do you guys want to do this? We don't have to do this anymore if you don't want to. And people still want to do it. I even had people like, look, man, you don't have to walk. And they're like, no, I'm walking. Screw you, asshole. Like, I'm walking. All right. Like, okay. And like, I remember one day I was like, I was going to like not do the gauntlet. And then like guys who got their belts were like, we want to walk, right? Like, let us walk. They want to do it. Now, our gym culture is such that if you saw our gauntlet, it's not like this. I've seen some of the ones that I would consider like they crossed the line where they're literally the guys on this. I mean, literally guys like just being whipped multiple times per person. And they're just like, it's very aggressive and mean. It's like, ours is like this, like
people are laughing and smiling,
hooting and hollering. It's like, it's a silly thing. It stings a little bit, but it doesn't get out of hand. Nobody's slinging in their face. Nobody's whipping people multiple times. And I do give people, if you don't want to walk, you don't have to. Like, you literally don't have to do it. I don't care. It's like, at this point, it's like, it used to be you were all walking. Now it's like, I don't care if you want to walk it or not. Like, I walked it all the time, and it's there if you want to do it. If you guys don't want to do it, I don't care. So it's kind of like an optional thing if you want to, and everybody still walks the damn thing.
Yeah. I think it's the intention behind it, right? Same thing. Somebody walks in off the street and they see a bunch of people whipping somebody as they're walking down a line. You're like, oh my God. But then like, if you're one of the people at the gym, even some of the parents at the gym, they see it and they're like recording and stuff because they understand that it's like very controlled. There's kind of rules, there's guidelines. We're not trying to hurt each other. Mm-hmm. And like you have the choice to do it or not. And that's it. That's the important part. It's not like you're forced to. It's not like you're not going to get promoted, or you're not going to
peer pressure because everybody else is doing
it.
There
is peer pressure, of course.
I guess I'll do it.
But that's kind of one of those things like, oh, all right, let's go. Everybody's you kind of I think that peer pressure. I mean, for me, it's not the most enjoyable thing, but it's not like it wasn't like a terrible experience. Kind of in some ways, it's, I mean, in a weird way, I guess maybe it's like bonding to your gym and the people that you got promoted with. You kind of did that thing together. You walked the gauntlet together, like you passed through something.
Yeah,
it's like a rite of passage.
It is. Well, that's exactly what it is.
That's exactly.
I mean, it is what it is. It's a rite of passage. Again, it's just one of those things where, it's a weird thing, and I know a lot of people don't like it. But if you watch ours, the ones we do, it's very, very like chill in comparison to some of the like the nasty ones I've seen.
From the outside looking in, though, like people will be like, oh, what's that? But when you're a part of the gym culture and you've gotten to the point, you feel like you want to walk it. But there are certain types of gauntlets, like you mentioned, like there's some where they're like slamming like the people, that like throwing them really hard, or they're choking them out like unconscious, wake them up and they choke them again. I'm like, that shit, that is terrible. And that could be dangerous. And so dangerous.
I'd rather take a gauntlet of belt whippings to get thrown. Like, because getting thrown, you can, man, you get a disc slip or something. If some guy gets to throw you without any resistance,
there's some really, and they'll throw hard.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'd rather just do that, and even like just a belt whipping, it's like kind of stings a little bit, then it's over.
Yeah,
right? It might leave a couple marks, and you can like take a picture of it and feel like you're really tough. And that
right, takes pictures of it afterwards. Like it's fun. And if you're like, if you want to, we're not gonna also, if it's like a small old frail person, which we don't have a lot of, but it's like we're not going to whip the crap
but even
out
like
of them,
even like with other women, like we just like, for instance, like you'll have like 110, like Karen, 105 pounds soaking wet. We obviously didn't like really tear.
I got mad because we didn't freaking whip her hard. She's like, what are you doing? Come on.
Well, there was one woman when she's like, come on guys, like give me a little bit more than that. Gave us crap about it, so it's that's an interesting,
it's out of love, it's out of respect, it's out of like a celebration. So it just depends on it's just like, yes, you can say things depending on your tone, depending on your intention, where you're coming from, how you're saying it, your inflection. That's all the difference.
All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. We will probably, I'm sure at some point we'll do another version of that. I'll probably dial in some thoughts and share more about it. And if you guys have thoughts on gym culture, maybe we could do like an addition to this episode. You guys could send us either a message on Instagram at the Chewjitsu Podcast Instagram, or send us an email at the Chewjitsu Podcast at Gmail. And we can maybe do like an addendum to it, another episode maybe, if we get enough responses, to kind of maybe talk about some of the cancerous behaviors that you guys have experienced or seen, or things that maybe your gym has done that you don't like, or anything of that nature, right? A lot of times it's harder to be more like back and forth with the podcast because the ability to comment and things like that isn't there. So if you guys have anything related to the gym culture, chat that you would like to share, go to us on Instagram or email and send us a message, and we can use it for an additional episode. That could be fun. But again, big thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Charlotte's Web CBD. Again, if you guys have never tried CBD or never tried some of their CBN products, again, give it a try. You may get something from it. You may not. Again, I don't know. Everybody's a little different. I've experienced some benefits from it. That's why I continue to use them since 2018. So it's about 7 years now, getting close to 7 years. If you guys want to check them out, go to their website at charlesweb.com and you can look through whatever they have, whatever stuff you want to browse through and find. And if you find something you'd like and you'd like to try it out to see what kind of effect it gives you and your body and your ability to recover and everything else that CBD and CBN products can do, use the promo code Chewjitsu30 at checkout for 30% off your order at charlesweb.com. Also, thanks to my buddy Matt at Epic Roll, who supports the podcast, been a longtime supporter. Also does a lot of cool work with supporting up-and-coming competitors, and he's also a sponsor of the PGF, the Professional Grappling League, or Professional Grappling Federation, that'll be coming up. Again, probably having a new season in the near future. If you guys want to check out any of his gear, he's got everything from shorts, t-shirts, rash guards, joggers, backpacks. I mean, anything you might want jiu-jitsu related. He's got it. epicrollbjj.com is the website, and the promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. If you guys want to become a loyal patron subscriber, a loyal member of the podcast listener base and support the podcast that you're listening to, check us out at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. When you become a member of the Patreon, you get preferential treatment as far as questions go. So if you have a question you would like answered, we'll answer it in sort of a back-end space for you guys, specifically for you. We also have some things inside of the library of content that we've created for that membership, things like warm-up routines specifically for jiu-jitsu practitioners that can be really useful. And then also things like seminars that I've recorded, obviously technique videos, but then there's also some really cool stuff with all the guests that we've had where we typically ask one of the guests a pretty tactical or tangible jiu-jitsu related question that they can share that could help someone out with their training. And obviously we have 348 episodes. So we've had, it has to be north of 200 guests on this podcast. So again, lots of different people from different walks of life, different strategies of jiu-jitsu, different experiences with jiu-jitsu, sharing ideas that could be very useful to you with your training. So you can get access to all that at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And last but not least, guys, if you would like to get my daily email and join my Chew crew and get access to the ebook that I give away for doing so, check it out at chewjitsu.net/join. The ebook is called Focus Jiu-Jitsu, which goes into 12 different strategies for implementing focused rolling and improving faster in your training. Right now, I'm doing a challenge. It's called the Executor's Challenge. I do it in January. I may do it in July or something, but it's basically a group where I get together and sort of group coach a selection of people, right? We had a pretty good sized group join this year. One of the interesting things is as I'm working with people, I'm realizing that most people are not very focused with their average training. Most people just sort of like meander about through training. And some of the guys that are in my Executor's Challenge are good. Mm-hmm. Like some of the women too, very good. Both of them very good, but they're not very focused. Yeah. And it's one of the things where you can get so much, you can wring out so much of your training by being focused. And you don't even have to be your coach. Like you don't have to be a coach to do this. Like you don't have to be a skilled black belt to do this. This is something you can start from the very beginning. So if you guys want to get access to the ebook plus a video that goes along with it and get my daily email, go to my website, chewjitsu.net/join is the website, and you'll get it. And guys, that's that. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast, and talk to you next time.